Ok, bonjour, bienvenue. Aujourd'hui, c'est le jeudi 25 mai. On est presque à la fin du semestre. Ok, on est presque à la fin de l'année. Presque. On est presque à la fin de l'année. Hop. Donc, voilà les objectifs. Et on va voir en fin du cours si tu es confiant, si tu penses pouvoir faire ces objectifs. Hein? Donc, voilà l'agenda. On va commencer avec un échauffement. Ensuite, des expressions. Et je vais vous parler un petit peu de ces expressions. Puis le passé composé et peut-être une petite histoire et la fin de l'année. OK, donc pour un échauffement, qu'est-ce que tu as fait ce week-end? Qu'est-ce que tu as fait ce week-end? Donc moi, ce week-end, j'ai fait du sport. Ce week-end, j'ai fait du sport. Hier, j'ai travaillé. Hier, j'ai beaucoup travaillé. Hier, j'ai corrigé, j'ai travaillé. Dimanche, j'ai préparé le dîner. Et samedi, j'ai joué aux jeux vidéo. Et toi, qu'est-ce que tu as fait ce week-end? Okay, so we talked about what I did yesterday. Hier. Hier, j'ai travaillé. Hier, j'ai fait du sport. Ce week-end, j'ai fait du sport, right? And somebody said, je suis allé. And so I said, oh, great, awesome. Let's use that and let's help us fill this out. So, je suis allé, I went. So, if je suis allé is I went, what do you think tu es allé means? All right, so we talked about, so je suis allé, I went. Tu es allé, you went. And then we broke down j'ai fait, tu as fait, j'ai fait mes devoirs, j'ai fait du sport, j'ai fait une pizza. I did, right? Faire, we're going to be using all over the place. And I'm giving you these 6 expressions. Really, there's 1, 2, 3. It's more like 3, right? Because we use these verbs a lot, right? And one of the biggest things that I'm most excited about with introducing y'all to this passé composé is letting you express yourself, talk about what you did, because I'm always super interested in learning about that. So you can say where you went, je suis allé, or you can ask somebody where they went. You can talk about what you saw, j'ai vu. J'ai vu Wonder Woman 84. C'était médiocre. Bouf. Tu as vu Wonder Woman 84? Non, non, tu n'as pas vu. Tu n'as pas vu le film? OK. What somebody else saw? Maybe you're seeing friends. Maybe you're seeing family, right? Now that everybody's getting vaccinated, maybe you're going out to see family, right? J'ai fait, tu as fait. What did I do? What did you do? Right? Yeah. And we won't talk about it today, maybe tomorrow. But we could also talk about what you didn't do. Okay, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. I don't want to overwhelm you. Yeah. Excellent. So I hope you have those completed in your packet, and definitely use your packet as kind of notes, right? Feel free to go back and use those as notes, like to refresh your memory, or maybe I ask you a question and you're like, and you're like, I kind of forget how to say it. You can go back in and you can look at your packet. Right? Okay, les expressions. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some more examples. And you may be a little confused about it, like you may not totally follow everything that I'm saying, but try to follow along and try to see if you can kind of guess what these expressions mean, and if you can see kind of a pattern here. Avant la pandémie, ma mère est allée au Japon. Avant la pandémie, nous avons étudié au lycée. Avant la pandémie, j'ai dîné au restaurant. Okay. Donc, avant la pandémie, ma mère est allée au Japon. Nous avons étudié au lycée, j'ai dîné au restaurant. Avant la pandémie. L'été dernier, Madame Punzel a fait un pique-nique. L'été dernier, Madame Panzol a beaucoup travaillé au jardin. L'été dernier, elle a beaucoup travaillé au jardin. L'été dernier, elles ont nagé au lac. L'été dernier, il faisait très chaud et elles ont nagé au lac. Hier, tu as lu un texte en français. Les textes de vacances, c'était pas hier, mais la semaine dernière, tu as lu un texte en français. Hier, vous avez dit au revoir. Hier, vous avez mangé un sandwich au déjeuner. Okay. We'll come back to this one. Okay, so we kind of went through some of these expressions, right? Avant la pandémie, before the pandemic, l'été dernier, last summer, hier, yesterday, right? And we'll talk about il y a un an tomorrow. But there's a pattern with these, all right? And I want to draw your attention to those, okay? These are expressions that are talking about time, and they're expressions that are talking about time that's very specific, right? Before the pandemic, we have a very clear idea of what life was like before the pandemic, right? It would be really weird if y'all were wearing masks in a classroom before the pandemic. If I came into the classroom wearing a mask, y'all would be like, what's going on with Mr. Hare? You'd think it was really weird, right? But during and now after the pandemic, we're used to it. We've gotten used to it, right? So before the pandemic, we have a very clear idea of what that was like. Last summer, that's a very specific time. Yesterday, that's a very specific time. Maybe it's yesterday morning, maybe it's yesterday evening, but it's a very specific time. And I want to draw your attention to these because we're going to be using the passé composé with these kind of expressions, right? And I want you to think of these expressions as kind of trigger expressions, expressions that trigger the passé composé, where it's like, oh, a red flag, right? A red flag where it's like, oh, hier, okay, last year, okay, before this, all right, really specific times in the past, boom, passé composé. So what I'd like you to do now to practice a little bit. All right, so already this is really, really great. I'm seeing some of y'all start to use these expressions and you can use them well. That's awesome. I'm really, really happy to see that. That's exciting, right? So what I wanted to do is to really quickly take a look at le passé composé and just review this, right? This will be helpful for some people. For some people, it'll be helpful to have this kind of example of, okay, this is the formula. For some of y'all, it might not help so much. It might help more to just see it and practice it, right? But I want to give this to folks who need that support, that specific, like, okay, this is how it works. Okay, so elle a regardé la télé. Je suis allé à Philadelphie. Je suis allé faire du shopping. J'ai travaillé. Okay. So we've got with the passé composé is we've got the subject. So it's going to be je, mon chien, tu. We've got the verbe auxiliaire, which is going to be avoir 90% of the time. Okay, not all the time, but 90% of the time it's going to be avoir. And we've got the participe passé. So écouter, fini, vendu. So j'ai écouté l'album de Frank Ocean hier. Ou j'ai écouté l'album de SZA hier. Okay, je ne sais pas. Okay. J'ai fini mon travail hier. Hier, j'ai fini mon travail. C'est fini. Okay. And so we've got these where they go, so we've got what's called the participe passé, the past participles. So these are the things that you add on the end to kind of finish up the passé composé. Because it's composed. Le passé composé, the composed past. So écouter, regarder, jouer, fini, choisi, dormi, vendu, répondu, descendu. So take a look at those. Does anybody remember the pattern? Maybe for these first three verbs. How we get the past participle. Yeah, so with these verbs, the ER verbs, they go from ER to ich to get the past participle. IR, yeah, it just goes to I, right? So finir goes to fini. Choisir, choisi, right? And then somebody's already got the RE ones. Yeah, can somebody else Think about the pattern here where the RE verbs, what do we do with the RE verbs? Yeah. Yeah, good job. Yeah, a few people identified it, right? Where it goes into ush. So vendre, to sell, becomes vendu. So j'ai vendu ma voiture. I sold my car. J'ai vendu ma voiture. J'ai répondu à la question. I answered the question, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, excellent. So what I'd like to do now is to check in with the objectif. And I'd like to see, if you haven't already, I'd love to see folks using those expressions and trying to make a sentence with them, right? Just in the chat. And it's not for a grade, so it's just practice, right? Just practice. And then once you've done that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna encourage you to go ahead and look at the unit activity packet. And tomorrow we're gonna start working on this. We won't start working on it today. But tomorrow we're gonna start working on raconter une histoire, okay? And I'm gonna break this down a little bit. But if you want to, after we do this quick check-in, you can go ahead and start looking at these slides and kind of looking through them a little bit. You can even start the activity if you want, if you're feeling motivated. All right. But real quick, what I'd love to see is in the chat, dans le chat, complétez une de ces phrases suivantes. Okay. And some of you have already done this. I saw a lot of really great answers. All right. So if you already did it, no worries. Right. But I'd love to see everybody try. All right. At least try to finish one of these following sentences, right? One of these expressions, right? So you're gonna say avant la pandémie, or maybe l'été dernier, or hier, right? Maybe one of these three, and you're gonna finish it. You're gonna try to finish it, right? I'd love to see everybody try. Okay, so I'm still waiting to hear from a few people. While we wait though, I just wanted to talk to you real quick about the end of the year. So we're closing on the end of the school year, right? It's been a wild year, but we're almost at the end. It's almost summertime. I'm ready. I know y'all are ready. Your teachers are probably ready. You know, we're almost there, right? So last week we did these things. We started looking at the passé composé. Today, this is what we kind of looked at. And tomorrow we're going to start looking at le lièvre et la tortue, that activity I showed you in the activity packet. Être et avoir. We might do some catching up here. And then le passé composé, and we're going to start doing the finishing activity, the final activity for this unit, right? And the goal for this unit is that you can use it, you can use the passé composé sometimes, right? You can use it a little bit here and there. That not that you mastered it 100%, right? But that you can use it a little bit here and there, or at the very least you can recognize it and you understand it. Okay? So yeah. So I'll go ahead and stick around if there are any questions. I also put in grades for your recordings, for your Chez Moi recordings. I finally got to it. It took a while for me to get to it. I apologize for the wait, but I finally put in those grades for the recordings, and I'm happy to answer questions if there are any. Otherwise, I will say au revoir et à demain.